All right, thank you all for your patience. Good. Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Eugene's September 26, 2025 program, Letters from Dachau. My name is Thomas Hura. I serve as president of City Club, and I'm pleased to welcome you to another of the many forums we've held since 1990 in the name of our mission to build community vision through open inquiry. City Club is lucky to be a trusted, open, and independent voice for Eugene area community members to be heard. And as a lifelong Eugenian, I dare say the community is lucky to have the City Club and to hear from our program guests and questions from the audience, whether here in the beautiful Wow Hall, online, or over the radio. We believe these kinds of gatherings around critical community topics strengthen our understanding of one another and ultimately our ability to support the community building work in so many sectors of Eugene. In today's fractured information landscape, we want to be a space where you can participate in unearthing, disseminating, and sharing relevant information in conversation together. We would love for you to browse our past programs at cityclubofeugene.org or our YouTube or Facebook. Do consider becoming a member if you'd like to support our work as the only city club in Oregon that meets weekly. I want to take a moment to announce an edit to the title of our previous program from 2 weeks ago, which was about mobile crisis response within the city of Eugene. We felt the need to change the title of this program from Can We Bring Cahoots Back to the new title, Can We Bring Cahoots-like Services Back? And in each iteration, the title goes on to say The Future of Mobile Crisis Services in Eugene. The previous title made some confusion about the content of the program, which I want to acknowledge and correct, while the new title better reflects what the program was about. You are invited to view that and the rest of our past programs online and to continue providing invaluable community feedback. Thank you for keeping us sharp. I'd like to thank our Platinum and Diamond community sponsors. The University of Oregon has helped Oregonians question critically, think logically, reason effectively, communicate clearly, act creatively, and live ethically since 1876. Get more information at uoregon.edu. Lane Community College transforms lives through learning. LCC provides comprehensive, accessible, high-quality educational opportunities that promote student success. For more information, visit lanecc.edu. Thank you to the City of Eugene and to Lane County for their generous support as well. A special acknowledgement of our Sapphire sponsor, Summit Bank. We're proud to do our banking at Summit, and we're grateful for the contributions of Summit's employees to our club and community. A quick reminder, please silence all cell phones in the hall. And with that, I'm pleased to introduce the coordinator of today's program, Joel Corin.
There have been some changes. The title of today's program is Letters from Dachau, and one of our speakers, Clarice Wilsie, had a slight medical emergency and will not be able to speak today. But you'll hear her story and the story of her father. You know, you never know what you're going to find when you're cleaning out somebody else's or your parents' house. In Clarice's experience, what she found changed her life. In October 1944, Dr. David Wilsie left his wife and family and infant son to serve in France with the 116th Evacuation Hospital. Dr. Wilsie was a brilliant anesthesiologist and member of Alpha Omega Alpha, which is the Phi Beta Kappa of medical school. He was among the first doctors to provide medical care to the liberated survivors in Dachau concentration camp. While serving there and elsewhere in Germany, Dr. Wilsie wrote letters, 300 letters, to his wife. Those letters were never shown to the kids, and World War II, they may have been the greatest generation where they were not the most communicative generation. They did not tell their children about their experiences. Clarice Wilsie is his daughter. In 2009, while cleaning out her parents' house, she found these boxes of letters. And with these letters as a primary resource, she wrote the book, Letters from Dachau, and the man she knew. It's a story of great courage in the face of cruelty, and after finding those letters, she became a Holocaust educator. And Dee Simon, the executive director of the Holocaust Center for Humanity in Seattle, writes, Wilsie shares with startling openness and deepest thoughts of a man plunged into one of the world's most horrific crimes. She reflects on this history as a daughter raised in the shadow of trauma. She wrote the book, Letters of Dachau, with the help of Bob Welch. Most people here in Eugene know Bob. Bob spent 25 years as a writer and editor and columnist for the Register Guard in Eugene, where he was twice won top honors, the National Society of Newspaper Columnists. He has authored a plethora of books, including Cross Purposes, One Believer's Struggle to Reconcile the Peace of Christ with the Rage of the Far Right. A former professor of journalism at the University of Oregon and founder of the Beachside Writers Workshop, Bob has cultivated a way with words that reaches to the hearts of readers in all walks of life. I've told him many times that when we moved here, we learned about Oregon from reading Bob's columns a couple days a week. His latest book, hot off the presses, is called Writer: How to Create Nonfiction Stories That Touch Your Readers' Souls and Funny Bones. And Bob is going to fill in for Clarice, read portions of her book, portions of her father's letters, and we'll have questions later. Bob, thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Appreciate that. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for the Yum Bowl. It's some of my favorite food. Perfect for Eugene, and I love it. So, anyway, I'm sorry that Clarice can't be here, but I don't know. I suppose I know the story as well as anybody because I helped her write the book. But I met her in 2018. It was after a speech I gave. She came up to me. She said, "I've got this burning in my soul to tell a story about my father. He was among the first physicians in at Dachau, and but I don't think I can do it on my own. Would you help me write the book?" And we later met at Cafe Yum, actually, and to talk about it. And I was, I don't say yes to everybody, but I said yes to her because I loved her passion and I loved her purpose. She believes it's important to keep reminding people of what happened then so it doesn't repeat now. And so I partnered with her. I said, I'll do that. And she told me this amazing story, of course, of how when she was a little girl in Spokane in 1953, she came across these horrific pictures, literally of naked, stacked bodies like cordwood of the Jewish prisoners who had died at Dachau. Of course, she didn't know that as a little girl, and her father just scolded her, took the box away from her, said, "You never are to look at these again." And she was just, frightened. She had no idea what they meant or what he meant, but she knew that was a no-no. Then again, 2009, all these years later, more than half a century later, her mother dies after her father had already died, Dr. David Wilsie, and so it's time to clean out the attic in Spokane. She and her sister and her brother are up in the attic, and what does she come across but those pictures? And suddenly, and a Nazi flag, and suddenly the three of them realize that their father had seen things that he could never talk about. And again, and found these 300 plus letters. And a lot of letters were sent home from World War II. I've written some World War II books, and a lot of letters were sent home. But to be honest with you, I've never seen letters so deep, so focused, and so passionate as these. I mean, he was a great writer, and he was a great observer, and he was a great feeler, greatly empathetic of the people around him, fellow doctors, soldiers, and of course the people, the Jewish people at Dachau. But at any rate, I got involved in the process, and the result was Letters from Dachau. Her father was married before he went off to war, and so the letters were sent home to his wife. And before they reached Germany, he talked about the hellishness of the Battle of the Bulge. At one point, he talked about how there were so many wounded soldiers that needed anesthetic, to be put under for the surgeries, that he would be like the spoke of the wheel. He would be in the middle, and the soldiers' heads would all be right up next to him like the spokes in a wheel. And he would anesthetize this person, and on and around. That type of thing. When they got to Dachau, however, it was like nothing that he had ever seen. He writes, "We are in a nightmarish Holocaust. The 116th Evacuation Hospital had moved across France into Germany behind the advancing Allied lines. Gosh, darling, a guy just wonders how many times the world is going to ask for the Holocaust messes to be gone through. Each one seems about the last straw, yet more and more come. 2 days later, Holocaust after Holocaust is just wearing me to a nub." He wrote, he said, my most precious being, Europe's war is over. With the absolute worst, we are sweating, stinking, existing in the hell on earth, Dachau. He said, we are in a nightmarish Holocaust. I'm sorry, I just read that to you. But anyway, what he saw there was bodies stuffed into rail cars. I can't hardly even talk about it, because when I think about what we had to describe in this book, it's just so horrific. But soldiers, German soldiers, trying to pretend that they had nothing to do with this, trying to show their innocence. Meanwhile, he's trying to keep people alive who are dead, who are almost dead, and all of this is going around with just like no sense of organization. I mean, you come as a military unit across thousands and thousands of bodies and thousands of almost dying people, and it's hard to kind of figure out, where do you even begin? What do you do? And anyway, but her sense was that her father was a hero, and that's absolutely true. He was. What he did was heroic, and he went through things that nobody should have to go through. And when he came home after the war, the things changed. When she told me the story, when I interviewed her and told the story, I said, Clarice, there's two sides to the story. There's your father in the war. That's part one, and I think, but there's your father after the war. Now, when he came back, they moved to Spokane. He was everybody's favorite doctor. He was the guy. He was the head of the Boy Scout troop. He was the person who spearheaded the Sister City program with a city in Japan. He was the guy at the Episcopal Church who helped raise the money for this or for that. He was the big man in town. But he was horrific to his family. There's just no other way to say it. Like she writes, in Spokane, my father was among everyone's favorite doctors. At Christmas, our living room was festooned with cards, mainly from patients and nurses, praising him. He was good at what he did. No, he was excellent. In 1949, he and two other men founded the Physicians Anesthesia Group in Spokane. He served as a clinical associate with the University of Washington Medical School. He was the friendliest guy, but the great untold story of World War II is that the soldiers who came home were not just, as we were all told, men who started families and started to live the American dream that had been postponed. In fact, there were, in the late 1940s, there were 1.3 million who not only suffered from some sort of psychological affliction, but sought help through a Veterans Administration hospital because of it. In 1947, more than half of the beds in VA hospitals were occupied not by men with physical symptoms, but with psychoneurotic symptoms, nightmares, outbursts of rage, survivor's guilt, and the like. symptoms that were most often expressed not in public, but in the privacy of homes. And so David Wilsie had all of this pent-up stuff that he had seen, that he had heard, that he had smelled in Dachau, and it had nowhere to go. And it wasn't going to be meted out against his patients or community members, and so his release valve was the family. And unfortunately, Clarice and her sister and brother and mother were the target of a lot of that rage. And I kind of understood this because in 2008 I had written a book about Don Malarkey, one of the band of brothers in World War II. And I remember he was a U of O guy. And in Easy Company Soldier, I remember asking him, what was it like when you came home after the war? And he said, it was terrible. And then I said, well, what do you mean it was terrible? He said, well, it was hell. Okay, that didn't mean anything to me. I said, Don, I wasn't there. We weren't there. Help us understand what it was like. I mean, how bad was it? What's the worst it ever got? And he thought there for a moment, and he said, after work, I'd go out for a drink. And in the bottom of my glass of scotch, I could see the face of every man in Bastonia that we left behind. And that, for me as an author, was the first time where I really understood this thing called PTSD. Well, I understood why Don had trouble with alcohol. I understood why he would carry a gun. We would have a gun under his bed every night. But anyway, and so David Wilsie is going through this same thing. The year 1946 marked the highest divorce rate in the recorded history of the United States, a record not exceeded until 1973. One study showed that World War II combat vets were 4 times as likely than non-combat vets and non-vets, period, to be heavy drinkers. I was never a daddy's little girl, said the daughter of one vet, but I certainly was his POW. And unfortunately, Clarice could relate to that. The amazing thing about Clarice Wilsie is that she has been able to find, she's been able to do something with her frustration, with her anger at her father. For one thing, she forgave him after he died. And for the other thing, she's, in her speaking around the country, she's spoken to hundreds and hundreds of groups around the country on the Holocaust. She's basically carrying on his encouragement that he wrote home in letters to make sure that people understand this actually happened. This is not a myth. We're not making this up. These thousands of people were killed, and thousands more probably would have been if we had not arrived. And so she feels an honor to her father in being able to tell his story and to remind people that evil is done in this world, and the German people at the time around Dachau, they were just kind of looking the other way, like, oh, we have this, this can't be a bad thing, because it's our country that's doing it, and so it must be okay. But it wasn't okay, and she wants people to understand that. That she wound up becoming the human being that she is, that she wound up being the former associate director of the career counseling at the University of Oregon on a professional level, that she goes around the country and speaks to, while in her 70s, speaking to these groups, from anyone from middle school to Holocaust centers around this country. She'll speak wherever she wants to, and she has amazing courage. And I think her father would really be proud of her in a way that he, unfortunately, she said there's nothing we could ever do in our family that would be good enough for that man. She tells a story about how every year she would he would take her to this lake, and she would have to swim across the lake. And all he did was berate her for not swimming well enough, not fast enough, not reaching far enough with her arms. Nothing was good enough for her father. And that I have told her, I've said, I don't know that I could be as forgiving of the man as you are. But she's just she's an amazing human being, and she's she's in essence carried on telling his story that he wanted told, and at the same time realistic, and she, that we have to tell both sides of the story, that what it was like in the war, but also what it was like after the war. Because, if as a country we're going to send young men and women off to war, you need to know what the consequences, that a lot of them are going to come back damaged, that the war doesn't end when the shooting stops for the Don Malarkeys and David Wilsies of the world. And anyway, in some ways, as horrific as her father could be to the family, it's almost amazing that he was as together, and that he could be, as honored in the community and as a positive force in the community as he actually was. I wanted to share the end of her story here, and then I'd like to open it up to questions that you might have about the whole deal. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. During one of my talks, I said I was puzzled with why my parents had kept the box of letters and never said anything about them. Afterward, a local physician, a medic in Vietnam, approached me. Your parents remembered the letters were there, he said. They just couldn't talk about them. They hoped one day that one of their children would do something about those letters. Now, as she writes, one of their children has. It's true that when I found those letters and pursued those pictures, it unleashed a Pandora's box of sorts, at least for me personally, but I'm glad I opened it. There's a detail in the Pandora story of which some might be unaware. Zeus gifts the beautiful woman, Pandora, a box, yes, which she's told to never open, and when she does, outswarms all the troubles of the world, never to be recaptured. But one thing remains stuck under the lid: hope. Hope. When my father leaned over a patient in the Battle of the Bulge or at Dachau, I like to think that that's the ultimate gift he gave that man or woman, the chance that he'd been given a second chance to live. And when we dare to confront the darkness of hate and light, I like to think that's what we offer the world as well. Hope that we can learn from our mistakes, that we can stop repeating the proverbial sins of our fathers, and that our dreams of peace can come true. Yes, hope. That too came in the box in the attic that introduced me to the father who I'd never known and wished that I had. So with that, I would like to open it up to questions that you might have about Clarice's story and the whole Dachau concentration camp and such. So.
Thank you. We'll begin our Q&A quite soon, but first a special thank you to our award-winning public radio station, KLCC, for airing City Club programs on Mondays at 7 p.m. In Eugene, they broadcast on 89.7 FM. I'll add that it's Friday today at the Wow Hall. I'm dealing with some personal envy toward our radio listeners because while tuning in on Monday night, they might already know the result of the big Duck football game this weekend at Penn State. But I'll set that aside. For those... Could they tell us now? For those listening at home or on your commute, your household is one of several thousand tuning into City Club on KLCC. We can't thank you enough. You can also find all recent City Club programs archived at klcc.org, as well as on our YouTube channel and the City Club of Eugene podcast. We'll have a short break for you to think about some questions before returning for the Q&A. Thank you.
She is now considered a legacy speaker for the Holocaust Center in Seattle, Holocaust Center for Humanity. And she goes around the country giving these speeches. Last time I think she spoke was at a senior citizen facility here in town. I think it was last Tuesday. So Bob will answer whatever questions he can about the book. You're also free to ask him questions about writing or some of the other books or anything. We have 30 minutes for questions, so be creative. Your first question, ma'am.
Hi. My name is Sarah Adkisson. And thank you, Bob, for taking over. That was really, really a great presentation. I think we probably all recognize that we, as a society, have come a long way psychologically since the Second World War, and that, the recognition of PTSD and, the services of counseling and that sort of thing have helped a lot of victims. And I'm wondering about, it sounded as if her father passed first and that her mother was left. And I'm wondering both about the mother and if she was ever able to come to terms with this, and the brother and the sister, if they were able to forgive or understand or recognize what had happened to their father.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Appreciate that. I think that the answer to that is that I don't think that the sister or the brother, my understanding is that I don't think that it probably affected them as deeply as it did Clarice, because she's the one who not only decided to do something with the box of letters and write the book and kind of throw herself into this thing. So I think that she probably feels this a little bit more. Her brother's deceased. He died probably 4 or 5 years ago. Sister is still alive. I don't think that her mother ever, I just don't think it was ever talked about. I mean, in their house, she still tells, I can remember stories like something would come on television about the Holocaust, and her father would just say something, either turn it off, or if it was a Holocaust denier, he would get extremely angry and huff something like, it did happen, but then he didn't want to talk about it any further. So there was certainly no release. PTSD came into being, recognized in the medical profession in the 70s in Vietnam, and that's that triggered that. But there was none of that from the 45 when he came home. Obviously, none of that. It wasn't like he was going to counseling. It wasn't like he had any place to vent. It's not like her mother or sister or brother had any place to share what was going on. And one of the things that I remember she told me when the book came out, she had so many classmates came up to her and just said, "Oh my gosh, Clarice, I had no idea that you were going through this." That was part of what she heard. And the other part was, "Oh my gosh, I'm not the only one?" Because there's a lot of people out there who went through what she went through. But again, never talked about it. Just like Don Malarkey, we don't ever talk about it. It's the great hidden thing that we could just play into this myth that the World War II generation went back to work, started businesses, raised families, and lived the American dream. Well, not so much in many cases. Thank you, sir, for the question.
Randy?
Hi, Randy Prince.
My old Corvallis High
Exactly.
classmate.
Bob, I
Yeah.
really
Haven't seen
appreciate
you
it.
and I
Yeah.
saw you at the post office.
We've both been in Eugene for a while. Read the book, really. It was one you just wanted to read right through to the end. Great job, both of you, and appreciate the spotlight on this PTSD, the after effects of war. It was World War II, you didn't really think about it. Korea, well, the MASH showed a lot of drinking, and it was a comedy. Vietnam, soldiers didn't talk too much about it, and they came home in the 70s, but you kind of thought there's something there, and of course we know. And even today in Gaza, think about those doctors there. And there is a free movie at the Congregational Church on October 5th with medical personnel about them. What do we do after that besides stop war? For somebody who is constantly exposed to the violence and is going to have PTSD, what's done in the United States, some other countries that are reasonably advanced, they've also unfortunately had soldiers, the Danish, in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
What are we doing, is the world doing for the unfortunate case that war seems to always leave PTSD?
Yeah. Thanks for the simple question, Randy.
Yeah.
When cell phones came out, there would be advertising that said, don't drive and text at the same time. And they had absolutely no impact. But what they found is that the ads that did work was when they showed an actual, some video of a child, a teenager who was texting and then got into an accident. When you showed the carnage, when you showed what happens if you text and drive, or what can happen. And I think that's what, I think the one string we can keep playing is awareness, and that's what Clarice is all about. I'm going to do whatever I can as long as I have breath. I'm going to tell the story and remind people that this happened and it can happen again. And so I think awareness, by continuing to talk about it, by continuing to the City Club holding programs like this, writing books, movies, anything that reminds people the carnage of war while it's being fought, or in the years and decades after it's being fought. I mean, I wrote a book called Saving My Enemy about Malarkey. It's kind of a sequel to Easy Company Soldier, where he winds up reconciling, befriending a German soldier 60 years after the war. And they help heal each other wounds. Why? Because they face it. They talk about it. They don't bury it and try to pretend it didn't happen. They over a couple of beers in Bastonia, these guys build a relationship. I mean, Don Malarkey is devastated that he's seen so many of his men killed and didn't come back. And he's devastated because he killed so many Germans, including a 16-year-old. Fritz Engelbert, he's devastated because he felt like he, fell for Hitler, and he was complicit. I have the blood of the Jews on my hands, even though he never pulled the trigger. And so these guys healed each other, and they did that by awareness, by being forthcoming, by saying what needs to be said. And I think Letters to Dachau, Clarice Wilsie does exactly that. So that's the one thing that I can say is just let's keep talking about it.
Sharon?
Yes.
Sharon Reed, City Club member. You are so prolific in your books about veterans, and my question is, I'm curious if in your collaborations with the men that you are sharing their stories, but things like the Healing Wounds and American Nightingale, the women veterans.
Right.
Curious if there's a different tenor, a different tone, or different sorts of memories that you are dealing with when you've done such a superb job of bringing the women veterans' stories, maybe compared to some of the male veterans.
All right, that's a great question. Do men and male veterans deal with what they've seen and gone through differently than female veterans? And I would say, to be honest, I would say that women perhaps have been more willing to face it, more willing to come to grips with it than many of the men, because we grow up in a culture where, it's not manly to be weak. And to share about what you saw in the war is weakness. I was terribly moved by some of the, but I also found that when regardless of our gender, when we get older, we just get more honest with ourselves. Like I can remember this guy back in New Hampshire. I'm in a retirement home. I'm researching for American Nightingale, about the first nurse to die after the landings at Normandy. And I said, what was it like when you landed at Utah Beach? And he would get me in the landing craft, and he would tell me what it was like to be in the landing craft, then jumping out into the water, and then he would take me back to England. He would never take me up on the beach. This happened 3 times, and finally I said to him, Captain Michael Love, what was it you saw? You don't seem to be willing to share what happened. And he goes, it's too difficult. I said, what did you see? And he said, they were hanging from the trees. And I said, who's they? And he goes, our paratroopers. The paratroopers had come in the middle of the night of D-Day, and they'd gotten hung up in the trees, and the Germans had used them as target practice. So that's the first thing that he saw. So I don't know that there's a huge difference between men and women, how they dealt with it, but I think that it really, I think our culture teaches us to bury things, to not talk about them, because it's weak to be real, it's weak to show that we weren't all together. And what I saw in these 70 and 80 and 90-year-old vets was amazing honesty. Come forth. I can remember Johnny Bonzer, who was a doctor here in Eugene, and his wife, Sally Lou, was the whole key to American Nightingale. I wrote a column about Frances Slanger, this nurse, and she called me and said, "Oh, you wrote about my friend Frances Slanger this morning." I said, "You knew her? I mean, she grew up in Poland and Boston and died in Belgium." She goes, "Oh, I was in the same unit with her. I served with her." But anyway, what I can remember Johnny Bonzer in an interview he did in our kitchen. He just broke down, and he just broke down into tears, and he said these words, that they were all so young. They were all so young. Because he was just on a conveyor belt, just like one soldier after another doing surgery on these people. And so I think that we can take a lesson from our seniors who seem to be able to, I mean, to a person, almost all of the people that I have interviewed who are veterans of World War II, almost all said, "I hate war more than ever," that because I was in it, because I've experienced it. So there's an honesty there in older age that I really admired. So anyway, thank you for the question. Yes.
I'm Sue Walling, City Club member. And this is a bit of a side issue, but I was struck by a little comment you made that when the doctor entered Dachau, that he saw the German soldiers who were acting as if they didn't know what was going on or weren't part of it. And I guess what I'm wondering is, well, what could they have done? Because on a very, very low level, I find myself horrified every day by stuff coming out of Washington now. But what can I do? I go to a protest rally or I write a letter to my congressman, but I feel so powerless. And I'm just wondering, what could they have done?
Yeah.
I mean, we're here in a sort of democracy, and what could they have done?
Sue, thank you for the question. Again, this is all happening so fast. I mean, what's happening in our political scenario now at least unfolds day by day by day, year by year by year. What happened to David Wilsie was just like, yeah, we're driving along, and then suddenly, boom, here's this concentration camp. And who's the enemy? Who are the friends? Who are the enemies? What happened here? I mean, it's almost like, and then they have Washington D.C. and Eisenhower saying, you can't tamper with any evidence. You can't go in here or do this because we have to send our teams in here to investigate to find out what happened. I mean, because they were pretty sure that the Germans were behind this, but they wanted, they knew that there was going to be a trial that came up here, a war trial, and they needed evidence to show what had happened. So there was total confusion. And so to answer your question, what could anybody have done? I think they were too busy just trying to figure out up from down, right from wrong, friend from enemy to be able to know what to do. I mean, and so his job was just to keep alive the people that he could keep alive. And even that was, there was a lot of triage going on here because so many of these prisoners were, on the brink of death and dying. So I just don't think they had, I don't think they had a lot of perspective and context to really know what they could do. So I think, so it was just kind of a triage situation for weeks, just like keep alive those that we can keep alive and then let the military come in and sort of figure out what happened here later. But, yes.
Thomas?
Thank you so much. Thomas Hura, City Club member since 2019. And I've got Bob Welch here, so I've got a few questions, but I'll take them one at a time. Many in our area can probably relate to the experience of having a complicated relationship with a father or with a parent. And in writing this book with Clarice, what stood out to you about how she navigated that experience?
Great question. Great question. I'll be honest with you, and I think she'd be okay with me saying this. The only contentious part of our relationship was about telling that second side of the story. I think I was more adamant that we tell it, and I think she was more adamant that, I don't want to throw my father under the bus. And I think I finally convinced her in a shouting match in Yachats. No, I just, in a heated discussion on the phone, I was in Yachats, and I said, Clarice, two things can be true. Your father was a hero in the war, but he was horrific at home. And you don't have to feel guilty about that. You don't have to own that. That was your father being horrific, not you. And he's gone, and you're writing a book that talks about what a hero he was in the war, but he was not a hero when he came home. But I think that with the honesty I saw in his letters, I think that he would be proud of you. And I think he would probably even say you had to tell the other side of me as well. And so we went back and forth on that a long time. And I think, going back to what I said earlier, the response from her friends that knew her back in Spokane in high school, I think she found, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. There were so many other people who went through what I did. And I also was able, like I think it was C.S. Lewis who said, friendship begins when somebody says, oh, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one. And so I said, Clarice, do you realize how many readers out there are going to read your book and say, oh, I'm not the only one? And you're going to become a friend to them. You're going to become kind of a hero to them because you had the courage to tell your story. And going back to what Randy said, I think that's the base of all this, is the courage to keep telling the stories is what we need. So,
Bob,
yes.
let me interrupt and ask a question about the process that you went through with Clarice in writing the book. Did she write out chapters and you edited it? Did she dictate? How did that work?
I basically sat down like I would for a Register Guard column, except for it was a book, and I basically just interviewed her from the start, telling me the story. Well, first she sent me the letters. So that was cool because I had 300 letters. I had all this context to begin with. A lot of times you'll start a story just cold. So I had that context, and then I would just go back and basically interview her, and then I would write and say, okay, this is how I think how we need to say this chapter. Then she would come back and say, yeah, you got that right, you got that right, nah, you didn't get this right. And then she would help me rewrite every chapter.
Okay.
So, and it's just a lot of back and forth and a lot of polish.
How long did it take?
Oh, man, I think we started, I think it was about a year of actually working on the book. I think it was a year and a half total, maybe, from the time we first sat down to the time the book actually came out. But a year of work and then a year of sort of design or about maybe 3 to 6 months of design and printing.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Martha Ravitz. I've been a member of City Club for so long I can't remember how many years. I want to comment on two things. Thank you for bringing up so many sides of this story. In response to Sue's question about what the German soldiers could have done, or the Germans, I don't know, but I think it's important to remember that General Eisenhower, and I learned this at the Holocaust Museum in DC, General Eisenhower made the people of the surrounding area line up and go through that concentration camp so that they could not deny it. He was farsighted enough to know he didn't want alternative facts coming up
Very good
after
point.
the war.
Yes.
And I admire him for that, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
The other thing is that in listening to your story about Dr. Wellesley, I just keep thinking about my own father, who was a doctor who landed at the beach at Normandy, D-Day plus 30, kept a diary of what his service as a doctor was in the war. And as a girl of maybe 10 or 11, I found a box in our attic with pictures of Dachau. I think it was Dachau. It may have been Buchenwald. And I didn't know what it was, but I knew about the Holocaust, and I asked him, and he didn't really want to talk about it much. Toward the end of his life, I think he was in his 80s, my son was in Normandy and is interested in history. And so those of us who were here sat down with my father to do an oral interview with him. And he took out his diary, and it was all statistics. It was the most boring thing because he had handled the horrific matters he had seen by recording where he was, set up field hospital under so-and-so's command, how many casualties, how many fatalities, and then how they had moved on, and the next place, and it was all place, date, and numbers. And
You know-
then at the very, very end of his life, he lived to be 99 and always was a gentle person to everyone. His family members he sheltered and protected, and he was, again, a loved doctor in our community in Minnesota. But at the very end of his life, when someone asked him about dying himself, he said, "I don't want to die. I've seen too much death." And his flashback, and this may have been a form of PTSD, was of soldiers lying on the ground saying, "Doctor, don't leave us." And that fear for the wounded soldiers he had seen.
Yeah. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
sharing
Marty.
that. And it's interesting you talk about the statistics, because the Germans in the death camps were meticulous about how many had been burned in this particular oven at this time on this day. I mean, the Chronicles of Auschwitz, a book that I used with American Nightingale, literally you can just go day by day and read it like my grandfather used to keep his mileage numbers on his 64 Oldsmobile. And it's sad, but it also, when you keep numbers and stuff and you keep it all statistical, then you don't have to feel, then you don't have to face it, then you can rationalize that we're not murdering people. And so that's why I admire David Wilsie. David Wilsie's letters were quite the opposite. And I would say 90% of and I've read hundreds of letters from vets in lots of wars. I would say that David Wilsie was refreshingly different. He was like a journalist. He was like, he felt and he shared from his soul, and he wasn't interested in statistics. He was interested in human beings being alive or dead. But anyway, thank you for the question. Sarah, we're back again. We're looping. Groundhog Day.
It's very, very painful, all of this. And it feels like it's very necessary to feel that pain. And we haven't yet to come to terms with what we've done with our Native American people, what we've done with the African Americans. And I sometimes wonder if we will ever be able to have the courage to go there and to, talk about it and do the work that needs, and I wonder what you think about that.
Well, I don't disagree with you at all. I think we have a whole lot of work, and I think you mentioned the word courage, and I think that's the catalyst. That's on everything that pivots on our willingness to have the courage to realize that it's a strength to look back. It's a strength to admit that we have made mistakes. And just like with Clarice's book, I told her it's a strength for you to talk about this, even showing your father's warts. It's in the end, the truth is what we need to seek here. And unfortunately, we live in a time when the truth is getting very clouded. I don't need to remind you. And it's a scary time. But all you can do is just try to keep hammering away at the truth. So thank you, sir.
There are so many, this is Thomas, there are so many eras of history to be aware of and to learn about, and it's very possible that there's people that may not be familiar with Dachau hardly at all. Maybe they're aware of Auschwitz, but they are not aware of the other concentration camps that existed, and I wanted to know if what sources may have been valuable to you of contextualizing this book, and is the book a good entry point for somebody who may be rather unfamiliar?
I definitely think the book's a good entryway. Obviously, I'm biased, but I had the privilege of going to the Holocaust Museum in D.C. I've been to Auschwitz with my wife in 2017, and I read 2 or 3 dozen books about different camps. I would just say, be willing to dip your toe into the lake of pain, I guess, that is out there. I mean, a lot of people just want to stick their head in the sand, and they don't want to face some stuff. And I think it's valuable to go back and look at it. If it's a novel, go ahead and read a novel. There's great novels written about all of this. And so But it begins with you. There's plenty of material, but the matter is, are you, the bottom line is, are you willing to embrace that material and be uncomfortable?
One of the things I learned last week listening to Clarice was the astounding number of concentration camps that they had.
Yeah.
I believe it was like over 1,000, small ones around the country. Yeah. But
Yes.
My name's Mark Horney, I'm a City
Yep.
Club member. On an entry-level book for people, might be a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor
Frankl?
by Viktor Frankl.
Yeah, yeah.
He was, as a boy, in a concentration camp. I don't remember
Right.
which one. And then that's the first half of the book. And the second half of the book is his philosophy about
Right.
searching for
Yeah.
meaning. And it's not a very thick book, so it's something that might be.
Good point. Thank you. Good.
got another one, Thomas?
Sure. More broadly on the information landscape, this deviates a little bit, but you can tie it back, I'm sure, from this book, Letters from Dachau. Lookout Eugene Springfield is something I know you've been involved in, and I've found to be a heck of a resource for getting more local coverage. People in our community who have been here for decades know that we have had a past where it's been seemingly easier to find local coverage, and so I want to say thank you, and can you talk about the story of that for a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, Lookout Eugene Springfield is a digital paper that started in April. They began in Santa Cruz, I believe, about 4 years ago. Ken Doctor is the publisher. Ken Doctor is a grad student at the U of O long ago, and did a lot of journalism in Oregon. The startup in Santa Cruz after 3 years won a Pulitzer Prize. They're that very serious journalism, and they began here with, I believe, around a staff of about 10. That now is 6 months later 20, and I'm pretty impressed with what they're doing. I just write 2 columns a month for Lookout. I'm busy. I do a weekly Substack column, so I'm kind of busy doing that. And I'd really invite you to check it out. Just look out eugenespringfield.com. You can learn a lot about it. I believe and they're thrilled with the reception they've gotten here in Eugene. I believe the last I heard there were almost 2,000 subscribers, and but what you get, it's a 24/7 news cycle, and it's covering everything. The days, we went years without, when the Register Guard stopped its opinion page, you couldn't even write a letter to the editor in this community, the weekly, of course, but on a daily sort of basis, unable to do that. That's now available. Pretty excited about what's going on there. A sprinkling of some ex-Register Guard people, but mainly really young people. my editor's like my son's age, and it's taken me. It took me like 3 weeks to figure out how to actually send in an invoice on using their online system, but I actually did get paid. So, but no, I would really encourage you to check it out. It's serious journalism. It is as great as the Register Guard once was, when you had a physical paper and you could, spend 4 hours deciphering what happened in the Duck game yesterday or reading Jack Wilson's editorials. No, it's not at that level, I'll be honest. But I'll tell you what, it's a healthy step forward, and I encourage you to check it out. Randy.
Randy, no questions about high school.
Yeah. Yeah, he was our student body president. Randy
Junior
Prince.
high school.
Yeah, give it up.
Yeah, thanks. The word concentration camp's been mentioned, and it brought to mind something that isn't so much from the blood and gore of war, but the just being uprooted, and that is our Japanese Americans. I've seen it quite a few honoring those whose lives were totally turned upside down. I actually worked with someone. Their whole farm was taken away, and they were actually shipped back to Japan. Sam Nato in Portland, at the memorial up there, and have you had the chance to talk to many of our West Coast American citizen Japanese who suffered that trauma, and get an idea of what the attention that is now coming to bear on that experience is doing to help?
Yeah. No, the answer is that when I think back to all the columns I wrote, I don't think that's not a subject that I ever wrote about. But I I just got through reading for the second or third time Lauren Kessler's Stubborn Twig, and I would highly recommend that book to understand what happened here in the, after the bombings at Pearl Harbor. Excellent book. I'm thinking about my next book. Who knows when it'll be. I'm trying to kind of retire, but I do have this novel in me, and I'm very interested in maybe incorporating that theme into my book, so I'm trying to learn more about it. But
One other thing I wanted to mention with that experience also brings to mind what's going on now, is that our trouble in the Middle East not only reflects the experience of Jewish people being uprooted, killed, and that lasting trauma that has shaped their nation, but there's another group of people that are being traumatized too, and those people who live in Gaza and the West Bank, and that's going to be with us for quite a while, and I hope that we can do something about that.
thank you. Thank you for all the questions. Good stuff. Appreciate it.
One other thing. Clarice retired to spend more time teaching people to never forget. And I think that one of the amazing things is that Clarice is not Jewish. Those of us who are Jewish have sort of lived with the Holocaust and memories of the Holocaust and people from the Holocaust for now 80 years. But she wants people to never forget and devoted her life to it. And I am concerned about the rise in anti-Semitism in this country. And so I hope that you'll listen to what Clarice says and never forget and work to stop it. Thank you.
So please join me in thanking Bob Welch, who was able to remain and do the program, and thank you to the subject of today's program, Clarice Wilsie. This has been our September 26, 2025 conversation at the City Club of Eugene. We will be back with a program on Thursday of next week. We'll be collaborating with the Springfield City Club at Roaring Rapids Pizza at noon on Thursday, October 2nd. That program is called A River Runs Through It, Riverfront Development in Eugene, Springfield, Part 1 of 2. It's sure to be a great forum, and we're looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you all. Have a great weekend. I'll see you next time at City Club.